These are tough choices you're forcing me to make here. If I pick certain movies, certain people who see this thing will think that I'm picking it for them. So I don't want to do that either, right? So that means no Back to the Future. You know who you are. So first of all, it has to be Empire Strikes Back. It's the one scene, dude. You know, Luke, I am your father. This pivotal moment, this idea of this evil dude being related to the critical hero. It blows my mind even to this day. Still just a well-done movie. You know, there's other things about those movies that aren't great, but, you know, Empire Strikes Back, by far the best of all those movies. All right, I'm going to go with Creepshow. So Creepshow is a very interesting movie. First of all the big fancy movie directors in the world, they have stolen a ton of shots from Creepshow. Because Creepshow did all kinds of cool stuff, but like the smoke reveal, you know, the popping out behind the corners. I mean, those kind of things are really essential filmmaking. And you know, when you call it like horror trope movie making, that's because of Creepshow. The cinematographer does not get enough credit. So make sure you go look him up. No, I'm not doing the work for you. I think I'm going to pick Tom Hanks in Big. So Tom Hanks in Big is just a tremendous film. It truly is. It's a great story. It has all these classic things, but the giant piano thing is again these classic movie tropes that you can just use over and over again. But they started some of that stuff. That wide shot that was like up above, that's like consistently used in every form of media today. And realistically, that was a brand new thing. Hi, I'm John Edward Keough, and I'm the president of Hollywood Film Group. I produce movies, I sometimes direct them, and even once in a while I've acted in them. But realistically, I like to pick stuff up and put them down. These are my 3 movies that I picked to be on a desert island: Empire Strikes Back, Creepshow, you know, if you don't, you know, and then Tom Hanks in Big. And you are watching the Film Stock Podcast. That's my preferred way of seeing a film, is up on the big screen, right? Especially if I make it, I want to see what it looks like up there.
You want to enjoy it with
Last night,
people.
I had 2 movies premiered last night that I produced, and I was a hands-on person in both of those films. And hearing an audience react to that was awesome.
No better feeling.
There's nothing in the world. We got applause, and I was like, in the applause, the emotion of knowing how hard it was to do that, and then seeing it. So I think that's my preferred format. But I would also say that then, you know, I don't want to take away from the new groups and the new technology and what they might make. I have my opinions about AI.
I'd love to hear them.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that.
Because I have a different. I think I'll probably have a different opinion on AI.
I'm anti-AI.
You are.
Yeah. But I'm not. But I also want to say we've been using AI for a lot longer than people realize.
In what format? Like,
like spell check. People have been using spell check and auto prompts for years. And so what I think I don't want to say fearful, because there are some people who react with fear. I don't think you should fear any technology that we make, right? So in the end, there's some form of human control. If you're gonna fear anything, you fear the human that's using the thing.
Yeah.
Because that's our like number one thing in the universe. We know humans are bad.
What? That's news to me.
Really? So I mean, scientific. Like I always. This is one of the things I say. The number one like guaranteed scientific fact about the universe is people treat other people badly at some point, right? And not that there's no good people and people treating people well, but there's always somebody not doing the right thing, right?
Of course, yeah.
And so that's why I think any tool in the hand of that potentiality could be bad. But how I view AI is particularly in related to art is that to create the AI future, you have to get it to consume something. It's not able to do that on its own. We have to feed it stuff, the training, right? So you got to train it by feeding it whatever, whether it's text or art or whatever. And it can't do that on its own. And then it spits out something that's related to the thing it was fed. Now, if you paid everybody that made those other things, it would be different. But that's not what they're doing. And that's where I find AI to be unethical. Like open AI. And I also don't like, we're going to start out as a nonprofit and we're going to give it away for free for everybody. And then the same guy who's still in charge is like, well, we need to figure out how to monetize this. Like, okay.
Yeah.
You were always doing that, dude.
Yep. That was the end goal.
I was always doing it.
That was absolutely the end goal.
And the people involved, I just, whether it's the, I look at all those folks when you have the zillions and zillions of dollars, you can do anything, right? You know what I mean? And what do you do with that money? And in this case, you're doing stuff that's you are replacing people, and it is what it is. And you can't. How do you anticipate that? How do you fix that? I don't know. Stuff.
No, I don't know either. I guess my differing opinion would be, and this is only like one example that I'm personally aware of, is the work of Harmony Korine. He most recently came out. He said his big goal is he wants to see what comes after filmmaking, the evolution of the art.
Right.
And he's got a film collective that's based out of Miami, Florida right now, and they're experimenting. It's all artist based, but they're utilizing these artificial intelligence technologies to enhance and change some of the things that, you know, are naturally coming out of their heads. So it's like, okay, we have this idea for this movie. Here's the outline. Let's really dive into this one character and like, what would that character look like? Who's supposed to be like this winged monster with horns and whatnot. So they're kind of utilizing it, as you said, as a tool towards
I don't have a mind with that. I mean, I've done that. I use Canva all the time.
What's Canva?
So Canva is like a, you know, it's an app. It's a website, whatever, that you can use to make logos and art pieces and all kinds of stuff. And there's no way that if you're going to take somebody else's logo and like change the font and change the placing, but you started out with their palette, that you're not influenced by that.
Oh, that's not right to me. Like,
Right.
You can't take somebody else's
Not
work
if you
and then
don't-
just put your...
Right. So if you do use that, then you're doing the same thing that would be the criticism of AI, right?
Sure.
So now if you use Canva as like a blank palette, when you take a, you know, like a 3x3 logo square, and you take that and then you look at other people's logos as like inspiration, but you're not taking their thing, then that's better. And that would be where I'm okay with it. It's like, okay, because I know that the great painters in the universe, when they were painting, they were looking at another person's painting and thinking, whoa, like what can I make? Or they were inspired by the sky or the world or whatever.
Sure.
But there was definitely a group of painters that saw other paintings and made from that. So you can't say that hasn't happened. And so that's where I guess I don't fall into either camp of the like super, super anti, like I think you should be strung up because you use an AI, which is definitely that. But I also don't believe in the inevitability of AI.
It's going to eventually have a place.
It will, but I mean inevitability as it's the end. Because
oh yeah, no, I don't think it's going to.
We've heard that a lot, and I will say this for art. If you go back before filmmaking existed, it always had some element of a human's expression emotionally, right? So if you go back to like Greek theater, Aristophanes, and all that, Aristophanes. I just said it wrong, but anyways, it doesn't matter.
I figured that's what you meant, but I wasn't confident enough to correct you.
My brain was. I've definitely post-festival.
Sorry, I'm getting a note from my producers here that I'm talking too far from the mic.
All right.
Please keep going. We were talking about the Greek aspect of it,
so
always
the Greek
human
tragedies,
emotion.
Yeah, they always showed it, and the actors were trying to express a human emotion. And by the way, almost all, art in many ways is derivative of those earlier art, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, they're trying to do this, and let's try to do this play, I think it's funny what's called comedy back then. I don't know that we would associate that with comedy today.
No, because it was more tragedy.
Yeah, really. But then what a Greek tragedy is different than what we would consider tragedy today.
Yeah.
More.
It was like a satire, really.
Yeah, more making fun of things, right?
Yep.
So I find that to be what I would want the root of any tool to be. Like, how are you expressing human emotion? And is there something I can identify in it? So my biggest pushback would be on replacing actors. It's hard for me to believe that a construct can express emotion in the same way. And so then whenever I do debating, I like to figure out what the other person might argue from. So folks will say, well, the painting is a construct of something else. Yeah, but they had a subject that they were painting. So then that person's whatever was captured, right? So it's cool what you're saying, this guy, and I've read a little bit about their idea of like making a thing out of their idea. So like when you go back into like older paintings, you see like a griffin. They made the griffin from a person that they knew, and then they put things onto that person in their painting to make the thing.
Yep.
So you can see some of the great creatures of lore, the Minotaur, the big centaurs that are jacked. They're all based on other people that they knew.
Yeah, of course.
And so I mean, even the like the great religious paintings, those were all people they knew, and so they just made them from people. And so that's the key to me. the one guide rail that needs to be there for AI is that there's still a human element. Otherwise, to me, we've lost the concept. And so I think there's a musical correlation. Like there's some
so?
electronic music that I fear has drifted too far away from human connection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge EDM guy, but I do like some stuff. But there's some stuff that's gone so far into the synthesizer world that I don't understand it.
It doesn't connect.
So I'm not saying that they can't make it. Go ahead, make whatever you want. Same thing with the AI stuff. Make whatever you want. I don't care. Making is good. The thing is that are you making it for people anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Because don't you want, if you're going to tell a story, who's going to read it?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to hear it? I always think there has to be some final thought about being the end result.
Yeah, it's got to have a sense of humanity, and it's got to speak to humanity. I mean, what else are we doing art for if not to, tell stories that illuminate something else in somebody's, life experience?
And we'll say this about the AI thing. There's a meme that goes around on Facebook all the time.
Okay.
That's what is it? It goes something like, I want AI to like sweep the floor for me, do my laundry, not take my painting and my writing away.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some value to that statement. Like when like the boardroom people were trying to figure out how to do this, why didn't they replace that stuff versus replacing artists?
The only thing that I can think of, I mean, you go back to what we were talking about a little while ago, put yourself in their perspective. I mean, I'm not convinced that the producers and like the bigwigs over at all of these studios, I'm not convinced that their end goal is to make good art that touches the human soul.
We're on the same page there.
I'm pretty sure that their bottom line is, their end goal is just getting money. And there's a great quote. It's something to the effect of, you can tell a person's motivations by the outcome. And all these people have just been interested in making their lives easier, getting richer. And I think they saw, can't speak for them, but this is what I imagine. They saw AI as a way to cut out the middleman, which is us, the filmmakers, make it cheaper, make it easier.
But it loses something in that process. And I agree with you. I think the big studios have been moving in this direction anyways.
Mm-hmm.
They're always looking to automate things or if they're not cutting out people altogether, they're trying to do it in a cheaper way. So they'll go find somebody that they can convince is not worth as much, but get the same value out of them working the way that they worked before. I think there's some stories of incredible directors who that's really how they felt. Dario Argento's one who like worked as a first AD and a first AC and a second AC for a long, long time under other people and didn't feel valued, and then had this idea to express outside of that. And you get some great classic films from him that I think wouldn't have happened except for he was frustrated, right?
Sure.
So I guess there's some value to that, but really, do we want people to be feeling frustrated? And that's the only way we get good art. And so then they've taken it to the next level. It's like, well, we'll just replace that guy with a robot or whatever. And I don't think that's right. I just think there's something about that. And it makes me not want to watch a movie, even if it might be good.
Like if that a good majority of the labor force was cut out in service of, artificial intelligence or something that makes it a little bit easier on the budget.
Right. And I mean, and it's funny to say this because I use DaVinci Resolve and I've used Premiere and Final Cut Pro and Unreal Engine, and all of those programs have some element of generative AI because they're anticipating what you want. Right. So like when you're asking, like Resolve, the aspect ratio changing engine is actually unbelievable, right? You want it to go from like 1:1 to 16:9. That's not a natural progression.
No.
And so asking it to do that, you're asking it to anticipate your thought. And could you do that like on your own? Like could you, like if we shot something on film 1:1 and change it into 16:9? Yeah, but it'd be really hard.
It'd be very hard.
And there's actually some films that were like that they did that, but they were literally slicing out a piece of the film to create that natural banner and then printing it larger. And if you go look at some old films and you look at like the edges of the film where there's kind of like a light there and it's a little weird edged, that's because that's what they were doing, because it's not an easy transition. And the lens, the way the lens is constructed doesn't lend itself to that draw. It just doesn't. So unless you change the lens and shoot it in that aspect ratio to begin with. So those things you can't say aren't there.
Yeah.
They're there. So if you've edited in those programs and you've done anything like that,
you're kind of,
you're right there.
You're right there.
But like even cropping, let's just, instead of a dynamic zoom, just a crop zoom.
Yeah.
You just did that.
Or,
and I know people don't
like
some anti-AI guys are going to hear that and go, whoa.
No, it's true though. I mean, even something as simple as just turning on the magnetic feature as you're plugging in, your different shots into the timeline. Back then, it was like you said, you would be taping that, you would be untaping it, like reordering the scenes, but just having that magnetic feature on, it's like, oh, easy, seamless cut. There it is.
And I know Nolan has talked about this concept of going back to film and doing stuff on these big reels and stuff like that.
He's a purist. Yeah.
Yeah, but so remember, where I come from, I work in the art department, right? And so all my friends are art department people. And I appreciate his public statements and the marketing behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But to give you a hot take, he's a bullshit artist. I'm sorry, dude.
Ooh, that is a good hot take.
It is.
Please elaborate.
Well, so first of all, the no chairs on set thing is just not true, right? So but the fact is that he's so big that no one can step on that theory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like you can't like.
And because he says it, the cast and the crew aren't really.
And then the cast and crew just are like, yeah, he let it. No, that's not true. Because because there's literal BTS shots of his chair with his name on it. So it's like, okay, so that means there's only two things that can be true. If he's telling the truth and only he has a chair, he's just a dick.
Yeah.
But if he's, I'm sorry, it is what it is. Like he's the only one who gets to have a chair.
Yeah.
But if he's not telling the truth, which that's where I'm thinking that it is, he just had the chairs moved.
Sure.
Which is worse. It's way worse. It was just like, all right, we're gonna hide this, and then I'm gonna talk about it in the marketing for my movie.
I mean, it is a good marketing tool.
It's great.
It's a really good marketing tool.
Because now the director is bigger than that movie's Oppenheimer in particular is a very interesting film. In that the star of the film is Christopher Nolan. And yet the acting performances in that film are nonsensically good. And so, but he actually was in the marketing elevated above them, which is interesting. I really, really think so. It's very interesting.
Why do you think, what's interesting about that?
I mean, I think every director, we want that, right? It's like, man, I would love to have people celebrate me and make it seem like I did all the work. But, a perfect example is the short film Shift we produced last year. Bridget Cannell was the director. I produced it for her. Hillary Dennis, a local actress, she was the lead.
Okay.
It's a single actor movie, except for the creature, who's played by Bridget's sister Erin, but you only see a shadow of the creature at any point in the film. So, it's a typical final girl film, right? Hillary's character is like a forest ranger who like is confronted with an evil being of some kind.
Love that.
There's the scream. There's the leave me alone. But watching this film, Hillary's performance is so dynamic. There's no way to say that the way we produced it, the way Bridget directed that should outweigh what Hillary did with it, right? So like, and I remember because I was with Bridget when she was writing it. And I was with her. It was a short script, only 5-page film. And Ben Heald was our DP on that, right?
Yep.
And Ben's an amazing talent, spectacular DP. But in a lot of cases, the camera's just on and Hillary's just eating it.
Sure.
And so on Oppenheimer, very similar things. The best scene in that film, in my opinion,
let's hear it,
is when at the end of the movie is like this time when Oppenheimer is getting an award, right? And Emily Blunt is playing his wife. And then the Russian guy who was like against him and had like kind of turned on him comes up.
Yeah, Benny Safdie.
And he tries to shake her hand. If you watch that scene, she does not move. There's no physical spot where her body moves. There's no eye movement. There's no mouth movement, nothing. But she conveys in that moment hatred.
Yeah.
Pure and unadulterated hatred.
The biggest fuck you to that guy.
It's unbelievably good. And all Nolan does in that thing is zoom in on that.
Yeah.
And so now, should we give him the credit for the zoom? Now, I guess you want to say, well, he identified and saw what she did.
Yep.
And maybe he coached her to that. But you cannot possibly suggest that Emily Blunt's performance in that moment is anything other than her own creation.
Mm.
Elements of it were contributed to by the director, sure, but it is so dynamic and real and visceral. And I immediately understood what she was saying, because there's been moments in my life where I was like, I do not like this person, and I'm sure my face it was telling the person that, or telling the other people in the room around me, because normally I'm like a happy-going guy, and that character, her character, was very expressive emotionally. I mean, she struggled with alcoholism. She struggled with a husband who was cheating on her all the time.
She struggled with being a mother.
Yeah, she struggled with being a mom, struggled with connecting with her child, right?
Yep.
You know, that was a real person. I read her book too, you know, years ago.
Did you read Prometheus?
I did, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I mean, these books, these are, like, these books are unbelievable. Just the depth that you get into these real, like, people. So I think that's why I love that kind of filmmaking anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's some, you know, fictional-ish stuff as far as like timelines. They did things to make it look.
In Oppenheimer, yeah.
So that's true. But the essence of the story is there. But you get that to me was the culmination of the film, was the pure hatred of Emily Blunt. And then I've seen her though. I've seen her on a ton of shows and talking, and maybe she's acting in those situations, but she's generally like a fun-loving, bubbly, happy person.
Seems to be.
So to be able to convey that is dynamic. So that's what I mean by
how do you,
balance.
How do you balance who gets what credit?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. If you don't mind me going back, though, you just strike me as a person who just like consumes like books and knowledge and information. Where did all this come from? So like when we met, you were working at Westerman's Prop House in Worcester, but what was before that, and how did you find yourself there? And then if you can, take us through, where you're at now and how you got there.
So I grew up very poor, in a single mother household. It was my mom and my two sisters, and we moved around a lot, lots of stuff. There's
originally from Worcester? Or?
Originally from Boston. I was born in Boston.
Okay.
And we just ended up in Worcester after like a period of time. And so the thing about my mom was she always had a book.
Yeah.
Like constantly. And she was also writing a book pretty much my whole life that she hasn't finished. She has a novel.
Still writing it?
She's still writing it. It's called Apple Blossom Time, and it's based on her childhood, right?
Cool.
And she had a tremendously difficult childhood, immigration from Ireland, lots of crazy things went on. And, just for her sake, I won't go into all the details. But, she inspired me to just want to read. And so she gave me books all the time when I was little. But I remember the book that started to change. It's not my favorite book of all time, but it's definitely in my top 10. It's a little book called The Little Prince by a French writer. Have you ever seen it? Okay. And that book, like, made me look to the stars and, like, start thinking, like, what's up there? What's out there? It just was so dynamic. And she gave it to me when I was very young. So then I just started reading all the time, just all the time. It was my world, my escape from what we were going through, because being poor is not easy in the United States of America. And I'm not trying to compare my experience to other people's. Other people experience way worse than me. But we had a really rough upbringing, and but reading could always take me to another world. So I would read and read and read and read. And then I remember I had a book report that it was due when I was like 8, maybe. And it was on Hawaii, right? And so
the book report, was the name of the book Hawaii?
The
or
book was on the book. So there was a actual like history book, but then there's a novel, Hawaii, by this guy. He writes these big, giant, long books, Taipei, and I forget the guy's name. I think he's like James something. Anyways, it doesn't come to mind. But I had to write a book report about Hawaii, and this like book got into the history of the Hawaiian people, like the kingdom and the naming and the language and the distinction, how un-American they were. They were not us. And I'm like living in I think at the time I was living in Brockton.
Okay.
And so you live in Brockton, and you're in this world of Hawaii and luau's and dancing and tribal culture and being ripped away by, at the time, what was the American machine of kind of expanding, around the world. But in many ways, Hawaii was only grabbed because of its military significance, right? So it was just really like a hopping place to go somewhere else. It wasn't really because we thought it was naturally ours. It wasn't a Monroe Doctrine thing. Like we deserved to just have this. It was just, hey, that's convenient. Let's take it. They can't stop us.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that's a hot take, but it is what it is. It is what it is. What are you
Well, I
gonna
feel
say?
like if you're a well-read individual, you're going to have plenty of hot takes.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, but so then you read the book Hawaii, and they get into some of the stories of the particulars, and so I had to write this book report, but my penmanship was not great.
Mm.
So my mom like helped me like write the book report. I turned it in, and I got called to the principal's office. Remember this? I'll never forget it. And he was like, "You didn't write that book report." I was like, "Yeah, I did." And he's like, "No, you didn't." This was I was 8 years old. I was like, "No, I definitely did." No, your handwriting's not that good. I was like, "Yeah, I know. My mom helped me to make it look nicer, but I wrote it."
Mm.
And he didn't believe me. I'll never forget it. He did not believe me. So then I got in front of the superintendent of schools with my mom, but I had my notes, my handwritten 8-year-old John notes.
Yeah.
And I showed it to the superintendent, and he believed me. And then I knew in that moment I wanted to write, and I wanted other people to know that I wrote it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So did that kind of kick off your
Absolutely.
career and love of writing?
Yeah. And so then I started to get influenced by different people.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of dove heavy into poetry. My first publication ever was a poem. I published in the Hiram Poetry Review. This is a long time ago now. I'm older than I look. So,
I'll ask you off air.
Yeah, that's fine.
You look great, whatever
I
age.
appreciate that. Yeah. But so the Hiram Poetry Review is from Hiram College in Ohio.
Okay.
And I was sending poems in the mail. I was sending poems in the mail, mailing them out all over the country, right?
And how old were you at this point?
I was in my mid-20s by this point, right? So I'd gone to high school, went to college, dropped out, was working. And at the time when I was doing this, I was working at Radio Shack. That was interesting.
Classic.
Yeah, if you don't know Radio Shack, go look up Radio Shack. One of the best places.
If you don't know Radio Shack, they probably don't know Blockbuster
That's
either.
right. That's right. Let me tell you, Radio Shack was the coolest place on earth. I don't care what anybody says. And this is pre Answers Plus Radio Shack, which is like a different version.
I'm not familiar with Answers Plus.
So Radio Shack. So while I was there, Radio Shack got its own credit card.
Okay.
Called Answers Plus, and they started trying to compete with like Sears.
Yep.
So they started selling like big box TVs, DVD players, that kind of stuff. But what Radio Shack really was like transistors and motherboards and build your own computer, and that kind of stuff. And so it was a different crowd, and then it shifted.
Okay.
Right? So, but in the nighttime, I was writing, just constantly writing, thousands and thousands, longhand legal notebook pages, and I still have a lot of that stuff, tens of thousands, maybe 20,000 pages.
Jeez.
Of me just thinking about poetry, and then reading poetry in between. Whenever I get frustrated with my writing, I would go back to reading more. So there was this poem by Charles Bukowski, and in the poem there's a line, and it's "So rude the flowers that grow, but do not grow beautiful," is a line in one of his poems.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's amazing. So I took that line and made it the title of a poem.
Okay.
All right. So this poem probably changed my life as a creative.
The one that you wrote, or the one that
one that I wrote from that line.
Okay.
So I wrote this poem from that line, and I sent it in to the Hiram Review. And the editor there, who's still the editor now, 20 years later, Willard Greenwood, he did something that very few editors do. Instead of just rejecting the poem, he read it, and he sent me back feedback.
Cool.
And the feedback was, this is good,
but
it could be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best pieces of notes you can get.
And then at the very bottom, it said, rewrite it and kill your babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that meant. Right?
Okay.
Like at the time, I was like, in my 20s, like, kill my baby. I don't have any kids.
I don't have kids.
What do you mean, kill my babies? And then so I was reading the poem, and there were 2 or 3 lines in that poem I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that sounds great. And then I remembered his advice, kill your babies.
Mm-hmm.
So I took those lines out of the poem completely. And then I had what was left, and I restructured what was left, and then sent it in, and they published it.
Hell yeah.
Got a check for $15. I'll remember that. And then I was like so excited about like $15. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I got $15. And then they sent me copies of it, Like I got like in a little manila envelope, I got copies of it. It's
That
like
were the ones that are going to be published?
No, it was the actual magazine.
Yeah.
You know, like before they published it. So I got a copy of it before it was like out.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
I was like, this is so cool. So then, I mean, I read every poem in that book because I thought, if my poem is with these poems are the poems I want to be with, you know? And so then that just drove me from there. So I moved, and I've been published a bunch of times as a poet, probably like 40 or 50 times at this point. In fact, just recently, which is funny, I was published in the same Worcester magazine issue that Solus got covered for filmmaking in Worcester
cool.
recently, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So on the page where
You got
Tommy,
two
my
accomplishments.
poem is on the left, I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was recent, and that's exciting. But then I started moving into essays, and I started doing other stuff, you know, music stuff and sound things and just all kinds of things. And then I ended up at Westerman.
Wow, jeez. You just abrupt stop right there. I was going to say, that's like, so you became a jack of all trades, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. So, but you got to see, this is what you have to do when you're dealing with a poet. That's not the whole line.
What do you mean?
So it's a jack of all trades, a master of none, and most people stop there.
Yeah. What's the whole line?
But so the whole line is a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But a jack of all trades is better than a master of one.
Oh, okay.
That's the poem. And the idea is that a well-rounded person is better than someone who's like just an expert in one field.
Yeah.
And often when you see someone who's an expert in one field, they have like a deficit in some other place. In fact, we celebrate that in culture. The Big Bang Theory is a perfect example, right? That TV show, you have a bunch of geniuses that are great at this, but the whole premise of the show is they're not good at personal stuff.
Yeah.
In some capacity, right? Which is something that people now celebrate as a thing, but back then that's not what happened, right?
Yeah.
When that poem was written, you had to be good at everything. You could not be well-rounded if you wanted to be functional, right? So that's where that idea comes from. So I just like to do things, so I just did it. I don't know how to explain it. How I got the job at Westerman is very interesting.
Yeah, how'd you link up with Dan Diaz? It was Dan?
Dan Diaz, yeah. He hired me. So the way I got that job was I was going to church at a Hispanic church in Worcester,
Okay.
and I was doing sound for them. So like I was the guy who came in and turned on the X32 and put all the stuff together, and I helped them. At the time, they didn't have like a social media thing, so I helped them get Facebook and blah, 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 blah.
The church or Westerman's?
The church.
Okay.
And there was a guy working at the church. His name is Jose Melendez, who is like an HVAC technician.
Okay.
And he said, hey, you know, there's this job at Westerman. You know, they got props and stuff. You like movies, right? I was like, yeah, I do. So I had an interview with Dan. And I remember my interview with Dan. So I'm in the office with him talking. Great guy. I think Dan's amazing. And he says, hey, why don't you go walk around upstairs? So at the time, this is 2019, right? At the time, it was before what Westerman kind of became immediately after the pandemic, which is the go-to prop house in New England.
Yeah, hands down, bar none.
It's not even close, right?
Yeah.
And what I saw was unbelievable. I was like, look at all this stuff, you know? And I mean, if you've never been to Westerman, you should go check it out, get a hold of Dan. What I saw was couches and paintings and phones and all this stuff all stacked. And I came back down and he was like, you think you can help me organize it a little bit? I was like, yeah. So I did that, and I also helped out with the restaurant side. I did deliveries and stuff like that, learned how to pick up fridges and stuff and all kinds of cool functional things. And then I started seeing the Teamsters and 481 guys. And, you know, just had good relationships with them because we all like the same stuff. You know, I don't know how many guys love Jaws. I'll talk about Jaws all day. Let's talk about every single shot in that film.
Yeah,
Here. It's almost a perfect movie. People are like, yeah, but it's a role. It doesn't matter. It's perfect. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about dialogue. Let's talk about the lighting. Let's talk about it all.
Let's talk about how it was 105 days over schedule.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Remember how to budget your films, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, all the different things about movies. It was just amazing, and all these unbelievable relationships that I was able to develop.
You were kind of finding your people.
Yeah, and it was. And I kind of knew the film industry a little bit, but I wasn't working in it in the sense that I could ever say I was a part of it until Dan let me be a part of it.
Sure.
And so I credit to him those relationships that I had. I understand that I did work with my personality that led itself to friendships, but the opportunity, there's no doubt it came from Dan.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just had a lot of friends, and then I got opportunities in that role to do things that you don't always get to do unless you're in the union, right? So I got to be on set sometimes, and some set stories I have are unbelievable. You know what I mean? This is a great one. You know Setha?
Setha.
He's a set deck with 481.
I don't know if I've worked with him.
So
him?
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
So he was on. This was Julius season 1. So this is after the pilot.
I wouldn't have been. I was on the pilot.
Yeah.
I didn't come back for the full show.
If you remember the pilot, there was this. You know, it's funny. I think no, it's not in my pocket. But earlier, I had my hat from Julius season 2. Yeah, that someone gave me a beanie.
Yep.
So there was a cappuccino machine that was like silver and gold. It was in the pilot, and everybody loved it. So this, in the middle of COVID, they needed that cappuccino machine. You know, you ever heard of the story of the guy with the blue ladder on a set? Until you need the blue ladder guy doesn't matter. But when you need the blue ladder, he's the guy with the blue ladder.
Yeah.
Bring it, let's go. So I was the guy with the cappuccino machine.
Yeah.
So I had to drive it to set, and Setha had to meet me. And this is the middle of COVID. We're masked up, gloved up. We're meeting in the middle of the street to hand off a cappuccino machine. It's like a really cool story.
Yeah.
And so I got to do stuff like that and make myself valuable, I guess is what it is. But the coolest things I got to do was stuff like I got to do with you a little bit, 48-hour film stuff. When you're producing your own stuff, independent, cool things. And I get to like hear you talk about the movie, you know what I mean? And tell me the story, the stuff I got to do with like Stevie Schloss, Carly Byers, another local director, producer, Carly does it all, right? Where I get to see them working because the office really for the production was the warehouse at Westerman.
Sure.
Because when you don't have any money, you don't really have a production office, a place to do that kind of stuff. So I got to watch all you guys write and think and talk and then contribute to that.
And you kind of are learning more about the process, you know, through having these people in the place and hearing their problems.
Full school, man. Full school, constant.
Yeah.
And in Westerman is nonstop. Westerman doesn't stop.
No.
Right? So like when the folks for whatever, let's say whatever big film has happened at the same time as another, it doesn't mean that Westerman stops. No, we got to shift for this project to that project to this project. And Dan is unbelievable at that, managing 57 projects in his head at the same time.
Yeah.
And being able to make sure that I love this. He would manage like transferring props from set to set to set to set before it ever came back to the warehouse. Because of his unbelievable ability to make friendships with the lead men. Now, if you go to LA, and since then I've had some experience going and being involved with productions out there and in New York and things like that.
A little bit more detached.
Well, not just that, but hyper competitive.
Sure.
Right? If you're a Warner Brothers lead man, you're not working with a Paramount lead man.
Oh, okay.
And not only that, like you can't steal that guy's crew. That's his crew. That's a crew. And that's it. And in New England, it's different because we don't have as many things. We don't have as many people. And so when you see like Ryan Johnson and, you know, some of the other, well, he's just a great dude, right?
Love Ryan.
I've seen Ryan slide into different roles to be on films. And that always inspired me. Like this dude's an unbelievable manager, but he's able to move things around and go do other roles. That doesn't always happen in LA.
Sure.
And so I got to see that. And that helped me think, this is how I should be. I should be flexible. I should be, you know, open to jobs, you know. I just got to see, I saw Ken work for Cam, and Cam worked for Cam, and Cam worked for Ryan, and Ryan, and of course they all trained each other, and they all worked on different things. I saw production designers be art directors for other people, and this and that. And I saw set deck be set deck 1, set deck 3, set deck 5, and you just do what you got to do. And when I saw that, I thought that's how films should be, is that collaborative working space. But also, if you're in different roles, you learn different things.
Yeah.
If you're only a grip, then that's what your experience is going to be. But if you also work in the art department, which I think 481 does a good job of making you pick more than one craft.
Yeah, like my primary is locations, but my secondary is set deck.
Right.
It just so happened I've never worked at set deck other on you know, my own projects.
But I've seen you.
Yeah.
I've seen you production design your own films.
Yeah.
And you're good at it because
With the
I've
help
seen
of
the
some
results.
people.
Well, yeah,
With the help of some
But
people.
let's be honest. You had a vision. And so that's the thing about a production designer. There's some production designers that are just their own entity and their own vision. But I think the ones that I see find the best version of the film come out is the one that can take a director's vision and connect it with their skills. And so maybe they might have thought yellow and blue was the right color scheme, but maybe it's really black and red.
No, it's true.
Because that's what the director wants.
Yeah.
And then so then you make that happen, and it does. So I'll give you a great example on Solus. Victoria Hersey was our production designer, and she's unbelievable, super skilled. She's done a ton of different things in a ton of different fields. She's a director in her own right, and we put a lot of work on her because it's a short film. She's the production designer, the art director. She's set deck, she's props, she's the props master, she's the assistant prop. She's doing all that stuff, and so she did the best thing you can do in that role, which is ask a ton of questions.
Yes.
Like, what do you want here? Can you tell me this? Can you ask me this? And so I thought that is the result of those training fields, of doing all those different things. You end up with someone who's well-rounded and can do all those things. I think it makes films better. On Solus,
can you actually, before you go into
sure.
any more about Solus, can you tell anybody that's listening what is Solus, how it came about, and what your role in it was?
So Solus, so I have a really good friendship with an incredible guy, Tommy J. Dwyer. He's a Worcester actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff for 20 years.
And how do you two know each other?
This is a great story.
Love
it.
it.
The way that we met was I started my company after I left Westerman, Hollywood Film Group. And one of the things I did was I took a bunch of classes on how to do business online and all this stuff. One of the things
while you were at Westerman's, or
no,
you left.
This is right after I left. I started learning how to do stuff just randomly. YouTube University, you got to figure it out, right?
Do you drink a lot of caffeine?
Oh yeah, I'm wired constantly. Coffee, a lot of Bang energy when it first came out. You know what I mean? Maybe not a Red Bull guy because it's a little syrupy, but
So you're taking these classes.
I'm learning these things. I was still going to school at the time, so I was night school at Clark University, and for communications. So I was taking film class and all this other kind of stuff.
Business class on YouTube.
Business classes mixed in. Yeah, I was watching YouTube things and consuming. If there's any character in the history of movies that I am, is Johnny Five.
Yep.
Right. So from Short Circuit, input. So I like to consume information. And so I was learning this stuff, and one of the things you do is you do Google Search Console, understanding your business profile and that stuff. So I put Hollywood Film Group into Google, and up pops Hollywood the show.
Okay.
So and then I had a Facebook profile, so I clicked on that, and then boom, I see this guy, this handsome stud of a dude, ginger devil, that is Tommy J. Dwyer, just sitting there on the cover of this Hollywood the show, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's kind of like the name of my company. So I just texted him on Messenger, the worst app in the history of the world. The
Facebook Messenger.
Facebook Messenger, dude.
Yeah.
The some of the worst things ever have happened there, right? Just the stories I've heard from women about what guys do with that app.
Yeah.
But I texted Tommy Dwyer and I was like, hey, dude, this is so cool. The name of your show that he was doing at the time, he was doing a television pilot, is very close to the name of my company. Hey, can we talk? So we started talking, and I was also working with Manny J Media at the time. Manny J Media is a local Worcester-based community news platform that I still help out a lot with, and so named after the principal guy, Manny Alvarado, Manny J Media. I asked Tommy straight up, hey, can we do the red carpet? Because Manny has always wanted to do red carpet stuff. Yeah. And because that's his kind of style, he wants to go out live and do that stuff. So he's like, yeah, absolutely, come. So me, Manny, and Leanne Sylvia, who's the president of Hollywood Film Group, and she's the primary editor for a lot of our projects. Okay. We went out and we did Tommy's red carpet, and since then, best friends.
And what do you mean you did it? You covered it, you cut it into a video? Was it live streamed?
Yeah, so Manny hosted it, and I was both cameraman and producer.
Cool.
So I would pull people on to get interviewed as Manny was interviewing them, and we just live streamed it right up until the premiere of the film. And when the film started, we stopped. Okay. Yeah. And that was pretty much it. And since then, we've just been working together in a bunch of different ways.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys have been working together in a bunch of different ways. How did Solus come about? What is Solus?
So Solus is a short film. And it's a psychological horror movie, right? And that's the best way to describe it. Okay. And Tommy called me in this past December, because I also manage Dead of Winter Entertainment's festival.
Which I want to talk about.
The Dead of Winter Horror Festival. I'm the COO of that group. Yep. And which, of course, when you're an independent filmmaker, you have 58 hats. Yeah. You know what I mean? So this is one of my hats. And so James Lamond is my partner. He's the primary owner. I own a little bit of the company. And then there's a bunch of other people that are involved. PJ Rahal, Ashes, Alyssa Volpe, Erica Looker. There's a ton. Paul I can't forget Paul. He does all the behind the scenes, like Dan Bouchard, a bunch of folks there. They're an unbelievable crew. And so we were in the stretch run for the festival. And Tommy says to me, I want to put a movie in the festival. I'm like, okay. I said, but submissions close in like 6 weeks, bro. He was like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's make a movie.
Hold my beer.
I'm like, all right. So
yeah, because the way I saw it, like I've been keeping track of everything that Hollywood's been doing online, and I saw these updates, and I thought that they were coming out like, oh, we filmed this like a while ago, and now we're getting around to like doing some publicity and showing you the behind the scenes. And now I'm realizing that it was like a 6-8 week turnaround between conception, filming, and edit.
Let's talk about that 6-8 weeks.
Okay.
It was so Tommy sent me the script like 2 days later from that phone conversation.
Okay.
And I read it and saw what it was. It was unbelievable right off the bat. I was like, this is good. Let's make it. And he's like, okay, can we make it by January? And I'm like, I don't know. Can we? He's like, let's figure it out. So we started putting pieces together. And then I hadn't pulled the card yet of Steve Schloss. So I had a great relationship with Stevie working at Westerman. It's
a game changer.
He's like, you'll know. Somebody's going to go back and watch this episode, right? After you're famous and your crew is famous, and there's other people hosting this show. So it's no longer Matt. It's like the fourth version of this host, right? But they're going to be doing a search online of Steve Schloss and his history as a filmmaker because he's going to be famous, guaranteed. And they'll be able to hear me say, this guy is one of the most talented filmmakers I've ever met, ever.
Yeah.
And I could see that when I was working at Westerman, just from conversation with the guy.
Yeah.
And so he and I have been buddies since, but I always thought I wanted to bring him on a project that made sense for him.
It's got to be the right one.
And so I said, hey, listen, are you available these 2 days in January? And he's like, yeah. And it happened to be the 17th, 18th, 19th. So Martin Luther King Day weekend.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah, I'm available. And I was like, how much would it cost? And he gave me a number, and the number was so good, I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So I greenlit the movie right then. Like literally in a text conversation, I said, all right, let's go. I'm hiring you. And he's like, awesome. And so we sent him the script. Him and Tommy started meeting. And then from there, it just became just amazing. Stuart Valberg, who is a tremendously experienced first AD, came on as creative producer, helped us rewrite, flesh out the script, like really bring it to completion. There was an incredible writer's room. We were in there digging into that thing. But Tommy's just a dynamic writer. So it was just, you could see the value of it. And then we brought together a team. So Bridget was our first AC. So she's a director in her own right. Leanne was the production coordinator. She's edited. She's done a ton of stuff. I've directed multiple films. I was the producer. And initially, I was going to be the co-director only because Tommy's acting in the movie. And I was going to help him out. But one scene into the film, that went out the window because clearly he had control of the room and knew what he was doing and didn't need my help. So it allowed me to shift into a more just producer-only capacity. So he's the director of the film. So it was unbelievable. It's hard to explain to someone who's not a director, but you are, what happens when a director gets control of a room. But that happened in that room. And it happened in a very short period of time. Yeah. And so once that happens, if you don't know how to get out of the way, you're foolish.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And you'll upend a film that's now working.
Yeah.
Right. And he won Stevie over, which if you know Stevie, that's hard to do. And if you know Stewart, he also won Stewart over, and that's hard to do because those two guys are both, again, you're going to see their names in lights, someday. There's just no doubt about their talent. So then, and then, the first AC is Bridget. Jordan Carroll is the gaffer. This guy, another guy who's going to be named in lights. You have all this talent in the room. Jimmy Labonte was the first AD. There's just no way to stop a director when he's already going. And so that's what happened. So as the film started to progress, I got to do what I kind of like to do, which is produce the movie, care for the crew, take care of the things that are necessary, manage a schedule, manage all the items, you know what I mean? Dealing with Crafty, dealing with the different departments. I don't know, I like it. And I think I like it because of Westerman, where I got to be kind of in that role, talking to all kinds of different people in all different aspects of a film operation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, you seem kind of just like temperamentally suited to be a producer. Like, we were talking about it earlier,
Yeah.
but you come well armed to the table with knowledge, and you seem to be able to ask the right questions. And you also seem to have this quality where you don't seem to take no for an answer once you've kind of gotten your mind locked on it.
Yeah, so most of the time, if you hire me to be the producer, you're hiring me to be the jerk, right?
Yeah.
You need someone to be the bad guy because the director can't always be the person yelling at the actor. He can't always be the person consoling one person over the other. So you need someone who can handle that, and you also need someone who knows how to say no and knows how to help you out of your stuff. So like Tommy, and if you take those three guys, right? So Tommy, Stevie, and Stuart, they will work if you let them 23 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know Tommy, and it's been a long time since I've worked with Stuart, but yeah, Steve will stay there all day, all night.
And so here's the thing. Is the 23rd hour version of them the best version of them?
No, it's not the best version of anybody.
Right. So that's my job.
Yeah.
To make the best version possible. And the way that you get the best version is go to bed. Go to bed, eat a banana, sit down, and believe me, those guys all are type A, awesome dudes. There was multiple times where I'm like, guys, we got to go to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. They listened to me. And that's the other thing too, is they trusted me to be able to make those decisions for them. And then now you have a real producer crew relationship. That you have to trust that I'm doing what needs to be done to keep you safe, healthy, and whole. And then I'm going to not necessarily interfere in the creative process unless it's related to budget, schedule, location, operations, right? And so I tried to minimize my impact on what they were doing and where they got into the groove. And, when you've been on set, so, 2 days in, we're like 60, 70 shots deep now. There's a flow, there's a process, there's a thing that's happening.
Everybody's feeling good.
Everybody's feeling good until the producer steps in and go, well,
yeah,
why don't we try da-da-da-da, right?
No, try and minimize that as best you can.
Minimize that. So then what I was able to do is what would be on a bigger show, like a dailies meeting, right? We needed
Did you guys do dailies on this?
We did. We
screening
did
at night?
So we couldn't review a lot, but we did review some of the footage. So Leanne is by the way, Leanne Sylvia, if any of you want an editor who knows how to do a lineup in like a second, it's Leanne.
Yeah.
She can pull a film together in like a minute. It's unbelievable. By the way, that's not normal. So just don't get used to that. But she was actually pulling the video and sound together.
Kind of doing a rough assembly cut.
Rough cuts each day.
Yeah.
And of course, you've edited stuff. You know exactly. You sat in that room. That's not easy to do.
Nope.
And she was pulling together that night. So then we were popping on and seeing. And then I don't know if you've ever seen Stevie edit in DaVinci.
I have never seen it, but I've been the one who's been shocked when he shows up with a full cut in like 48 hours.
Yeah, dude. So for the coloring on the final, the Dead of Winter cut, because we're gonna update it a little bit. And we're gonna submit it to some other festivals.
Yeah. Now that you kind of got the pressure off of actually having a premiere.
Yeah, you had the premiere. You had everybody clap, and everybody liked it, and all kinds of good stuff. But now there's a couple things you can make the film even better.
Take some time, do the tweaks.
But the general coloring for the film, Stevie did in 60 seconds. And I'm not kidding you when I say I watched him do it in 60 seconds.
Well, he's got a good instinct for
and not
color.
Not just LUT application, which of course, it's easy to say, all right, this is an RE, we're going to apply the RE LUT and da-da-da. No, he had multiple node structure into different shots and different lighting patterns in a minute. And I watched at this lightning speed on a device that wasn't his. It was on an Apple, Leanne's Apple Mac Book Pro or whatever she's got. And he's a PC guy. But he was just flying, just doing it really fast. And I was like, this is amazing. So then those were the nights. Then we're talking about the shots and we need to get this, we need to get that. And it was like, wow, this is real production. This is great. And then that's where I had influence. So I would say some things and I gave my ideas. And then I watched Tommy integrate those thoughts. And what happened is that I think like an editor a little bit, what's the end product going to look like? And I think that I had read the script so many times and been in it with him that I could remind him, but you thought this back then. Are you changing it now? or do you want this result?
That's another good role of a producer is to, because you get so wrapped up in the creative process and like, you know, what you just got and where it can go, that staying true to the original idea, or at least staying true to the through line, is important to have somebody remind you of as, you know, you're conceiving this gigantic oneer that nobody needs.
Yeah, not only that, it's like the script is only, I think it was 17, 18 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't want to happen is have 3 pages pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And none of them are dialogue. It's just construction, right? And so it's like, we're going to get this angle, that angle, this angle, that angle. What if we do it from, you know, and it's like, okay, guys, we got to tighten this. Oh, I just touched this thing. We got to tighten this up and make it, you know, finish the deal. And I thought they did. I thought they brought it home. And I think I just helped guide it is really what a producer's role. Now, I've done other roles where I've directed my own films and I've been involved in a different way. And I'm not offended. I think that's the other thing that makes a good producer a good producer. It's their vision.
Sure. Yeah.
Just facilitate it.
Yeah.
Don't be like uncomfortable with not being the one who gets the applause.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah.
I think a lot of folks, there's too many folks that just don't want to be the thing that they are. And I think that's what holds back the independent industry from some of the bigger things. We could do everything the big union shows do. And we can get to the point where we're paid like them if we allowed ourselves to be in the roles we're supposed to be in. So if you're an amazing PA, do that for a little bit before you move to director.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
By the way, between PA and director, there's a bunch of steps.
There's a lot to learn, for sure.
It's tremendous. And by the way, there's not all one way to get there.
No, and actually, I wanted to touch on that because it's so fascinating. I have this conversation with a lot of people, and I've gone back to my college, URI, and talked to a couple of the classes. And the advice I always say is like, there is no one way into the film industry, and there is no one path. And you could be a PA, then be a director. You know, you could be an editor, but realize you want to be a director of photography. Whatever it is, but like, I think it's fascinating because you're the perfect example of that.
Yeah, I've done it
like
all.
You've done, you know, gone from Radio Shack to Westerman's to, you know, producing your own
And I don't know
shorts.
that there was necessarily a vision in my mind that I was going to end up even where I am now, or that I knew what I believed is the future at any point until recently.
How do you mean?
So I do believe that there has to be somebody whose job it is to solidify the sustainability of New England film. And that means there has to be a person who everybody else can take shots at. And there needs to be a person who's temperamentally fitted to that. And I think it might be me. And I mean this, and it's not to say that there aren't other leaders or other people that could do it, but I don't really care what people say about me. I know who I am and what I'm willing to do for the folks that I believe in. And so that means that if I need to get into a position where I'm arguing with a state senator about an appropriations bill to make sure that not only is film made sustainable, but that we're not allowing big companies to have an advantage over the small ones, I'll do it. Why not? I saw Dan do that. In the middle of COVID, I watched Dan on Zoom arguing with the governor. I swear, telling the governor to his face, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
At the time, I watched that. I sat in the room, helped Danny set up the Zoom upstairs in Westerman, and I watched him do that. Dude is unbelievable. And I was like, he just told the governor no. Wow, that's awesome. Right? Like, how cool is that? Like, that's Dan Diaz. And so my first boss in film taught me that just say it. Who else? What are they going to do?
I mean, it's true. Going back to Dan for just like a hot second, though, I mean, he's just one of the biggest supporters. For any
without him,
filmmaker.
There is no industry in New England.
Yeah, I mean, he's just done so much for everybody.
Yeah,
I love that man.
He's phenomenal.
Shout out to Dan.
Dan Diaz for life.
For life.
Right.
But now you're kind of in your own way taking up that mantle to kind of be,
but a
fighting force for the New England film industry.
I also think you can't take like away from what someone did.
No, of course, but you can do your part.
Yeah. And so I think I can do this thing. I have a really good relationship in the city of Worcester with some of the like municipal people. You know, Edgar Luna. Everybody knows Edgar.
Love Edgar.
Everybody. I call him Uncle Edgar. I really do. In my phone, he's Uncle Edgar.
My favorite is anytime we have a show that comes to Worcester and we're doing location scouting, he goes, "We'll get you anything you want."
Yeah, whatever
anything
you
want.
Whatever you need. Absolutely. I'm so proud. So when we did we did Solus, he came on set, and it was great. So he came on set with Craig Simon from Telegram and Gazette. So it was him and the newspaper.
Yeah.
And he's walking around and he's meeting people that he's met like 20 times before. But he's like, "Hey, I'm Edgar Luna."
Yeah.
He's telling them the story, Black Panther story. Love it.
Yep.
And he's just a guy that is willing to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. So. In fact, we got the location from him. So the location was the Whitcomb Mansion, which is a big-time history in Worcester, 51 Harvard Street. It's an actual mansion.
For Solus.
For Solus.
Okay.
And it came because Edgar was like, I told him what we needed. And he was like, I think I have the right place. And so he just got it. And I mean, like, people are going to go, what do you mean he got it? Did he, like, do a contract? No. He went, got the guy who owned the property. I met with him on a Monday. And then Tommy, Stuart, Leanne, and a couple other people were there on a Thursday. We signed the contract the following Monday. So within 8 days, Edgar had gotten us the location.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just the kind of guy that he is.
Yeah. Worcester's got a lot going for it, and I think this would be a good point to transition. We actually had James Lamond on here.
James, my buddy.
Yeah. We had him on, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, right before the Dead of Winter Film Festival. And
today's the day after. For anybody who wants to timeline stamp this episode.
Yeah, no, that's great. So he kind of gave us like a preamble as to what the festival was and how you guys kind of met. But I'd love to get kind of your perspective on the story. And I'd also love to know how the festival went.
Yet another story of Facebook.
Yeah.
So, all right. So right after I left Westerman, I was given an opportunity by a former financer for Miramax.
Okay.
And I can't say his name because he's involved in all the legal stuff with it. But anyways, he said, I treated his son. So if you think hard and you go do a little research, you could probably figure this out. His son directed a 48-hour film project in the 2020-2021 timeframe. Okay, so if you go do your research, you'll figure it out. And I was at Westerman helping out. And that was one of the ones where I like had to drive the truck and help out like with the lifting onto sets and all that kind of stuff. What happened was he called me out of nowhere and he said, "Hey, you really treated my son really well. I'm willing to fund a feature project if you have one like ready to go." And I was like, "Huh? What do you mean fund a feature? What does that mean?" And I mean, I was just in like in the woods of doing film. He's like, "Yeah, I'll fund a feature up to $2 million." I was like, Are you like kidding with me? You got to be kidding with me, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no. He's like, look me up. He gave me his name. I was like, ooh, wow, okay. I mean, is this real? And he's like, yeah, it's real, John. You treated my son well. I'm willing to help you out. I think that you know what you're doing. Let's try it out. It's like, okay. So I had a script, right, that I was interested in buying. That was a really good script written by some cool people.
Okay.
That deal fell through. And it fell through because I made the decision, I don't know if I want to work with that group. And I went back to this guy and said to him, I can't take your money and do this because I think it was the wrong project. So I'm not ready for that project. And so he said, all right, I mean, I'll help you do whatever you want, but, I appreciate that you didn't take my money and blow it. And so he and I have been friends since then. So what I did instead is I started interviewing folks to potentially direct that picture and this concept that me and this guy were working on together. And so one of the people I interviewed was PJ Rahal, right? So Patrick Rahal. And the reason I did is because I had put a post up on Facebook in New England Film and like Mass Film Works. I put a post up, said, hey, I'm looking to just interview folks that might be interested in being a director of a film. I have this money. Maybe we can do this. And so PJ answered that, and he called me, and we talked on the phone for hours and hours and hours. He's a big Jaws guy, told me all kinds of stuff, and we just became, again, instant friends. This is what John does. I get a friend. He's my friend. Now I keep him, PJ, in my pocket. Right?
Yeah.
So love him. So then he said, I got to introduce you to this guy, James. He's trying to do a film festival. Let's why don't you guys talk? So we got on the phone. And I remember this. I was in the parking lot of City Hall at Worcester after a city council meeting with Manning.
Okay.
So we covered the meeting. I went downstairs, got into my car. It was like 8:30 at night. Got on the phone with James in the parking lot. I hadn't pulled out yet. It was on the Bluetooth, right? We're sitting there. And we talked till like 1 a.m.
And you're still in the parking lot.
In the parking lot. And in that conversation, we came up with the full framework for Dead of Winter. He told me about his different team, people, all the roles that they had done,
Mm-hmm.
all the film festival experience that they had, all the convention experience that they had. And he's just an honorable dude.
Yeah.
And he said, basically, you know, could we put this together? And he's like, I kind of think that the right time to do it would be at the end of February because there's really nothing going on.
Yep.
And at the time, I think it was 74 days from that day until the first Dead of Winter Horror Festival.
Yeah, that's what he had said. It was like an absurd turnaround.
And we built the first Dead of Winter in 74 days.
Yeah.
Mechanics Hall, 503 people, 9 films over two blocks, and I think it was 32 vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And
jeez, how do you?
That's what you did.
That's nuts, man. That really is nuts.
And that festival, that process, really changed how I was viewed locally in the industry. And I can't say enough about that, but people got to see what I can do. And from there, like everything, I can't tell you how many pitch decks and scripts I get a day. I'm serious. I have an email that's set aside just for that. It's info@hollywoodfilmgroup.com. Go ahead and send your script. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects from all over the world that I get because of that. And that's, hey, I saw that you did this. Hey, can you read my script? Hey, can you check out my pitch deck? Hey, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so then you start looking through them and you start thinking about, well, is this good? Is that good? And of course, I love to read.
Yeah.
So I'm just reading
that
people's
helps.
scripts, you know what I mean? And just going through, and then I'm giving advice. And we talked a little bit about this on the phone, but I learned how to ask questions. So pitch decks are funny, right? It's just a PowerPoint, really, that we call a pitch deck. And what people think is a pitch deck is actually a lookbook, right? But whatever, technical Hollywood terms. But most of the time, a pitch deck that I would get is like a 16-page thing, and it has like produced by, and it's like 43 people and starring, you know, and there's nobody that's known, and going through all these different elements. And so I said, well, I got to learn this and understand this, and why do people do this? So I started researching it, you know, reading books, understanding where pitch decks came from, what the idea was. But then I started reading into why films get made.
Okay, I love this. Please go.
At the highest level, films get made because 1 or 2 people say the right sentence to 1 or 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to your log line and whether it makes sense. And so if you can't take the essential element of your film and boil it down to one sentence that you can communicate well, then it's very unlikely your film's ever going to get made. You can struggle with it, you can fight it, you can push it all you want, but if you can't communicate your story simply, then there's no one who's going to understand it and give you money, right? And now, if you have your own money, fund it, but that movie might not ever make it out into the universe.
Yeah, and if you still can't distill it down to that 1-2 sentence, it's like, I've been in this situation where it's like, yeah, you still push forward with the movie, you make the damn thing as good as you can, but it might be money not well spent if, you know, the idea wasn't solid at its core.
Absolutely. And we've seen this. We talked about it too. Thousands and thousands and thousands of movies are made all the time now, right? But they're not all making the story make something out to somebody else, make sense to the other person that's looking at it. And again, I'm reading like producer books, like at this point. And what I read was every single producer that's worth anything has to think about distribution in the end.
Yeah.
When you make a movie, who's it going to be shown to? I'm not talking about money. It's about who gets to see it. It's about audience, right? And so who are you making your movie for, and who are you going to show it to? So I think that every filmmaker should, first of all, make the movie for yourself.
Yeah.
But then figure out who you like and want to show it to. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
And if you can't answer those questions, you don't have a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You have a story. And there's a ton of stories, right? There's a lot of writing that people do that they don't realize they do. Like moms and dads have told stories to their kids for years. And I know there's some famous folks who ended up turning their story into that. Well, we're not going to get into that. Let's just focus on the stories that you've been told your whole life or that you've told that never were written down and then there never became a different piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, right? That's editing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're working on it all the time. So getting that essential element allows you then to make something happen. And what James did with Dead of Winter is he told me his why.
Mm.
And when he told me his why, I knew what to do to get that why to happen. And then once we made it happen, it all of a sudden catapults you to this different status because you did a thing. You just finished a thing. Now, there's been a million people who have done film festivals. If you go on Film Freeway right now and you put in, festivals with a due date of February 28th. That just happens to be Friday.
200.
200.
Yeah, easily.
Just in the United States. If you go international, you might be dealing with a lot more. And if you do online only festivals, oh, dude, it's on.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands and thousands. And some of them are probably fake because everything on the internet, there's robots and all that kind of stuff. But if you boil it down, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who had that same experience with how much do you charge for a submission? How much do you charge for a ticket? Do you charge for a t-shirt? Do you give it away? Do you do this? Do you do that? What do you do? How do you make people happy? And figuring that out takes a lot of thought process, figuring out what would this look like. And then I just happen to have relationships because of how I am with a ton of people, including venues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Mechanics Hall is where we did it. If you've ever been to Mechanics Hall in Worcester, it's one of the most beautiful buildings on earth. It's unbelievably designed well. It's literally a place where like the biggest classical artists in the world go to play their music.
I know James was funny when he was on here. He's like, God, we are throwing a horror film festival and we, ironically got it into the nicest venue in Worcester. There's something kind of punk rock about that.
It is. And so the lady who's the executive director, her name's Kathleen George, she is leaving in July. Inexplicably, she thinks I'm awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Olivia Hashis is their salesperson. Olivia and I have a good relationship, and you want to know where that relationship came from?
Westerman's.
Tommy Dwyer's Hollywood premiere.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which came from
So you're
Messenger, which came from, that's it, man.
You're just gathering all your connections. You're holding on to them. You're making sure that they're strong.
And
it's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, okay, the festival ended yesterday, right?
Yep.
So now we have to do reconciliation. We have to figure out what we owe, what we don't owe, who we got to pay, who we don't got to pay. And of course, one of those things is the venue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We already made a big deposit before with people's ticket sales, but now we got to go figure out what do we have to do between now and X time, because there's usually time to pay off what it is, figure that out, and the next one, which is next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to meet with Olivia, sit down, talk to her. And so they really just want to talk to you. How you doing? Where are you at? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Da, 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 da. That's really what it is. And I like to talk, as we can see right now. I'm chatting it up with you.
You're great.
So, I like to engage with people. And so that's really what I'm good at. And James has a specific creative vision. Now, I wouldn't say that I always wanted to work in horror, but I would say I want to work with people that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I like James. And
James is easy to like.
Who doesn't like James?
Yeah, it was easy sitting down and talking with him. I love how direct he is.
He doesn't bullshit and he's so loyal. And the other thing that really struck me with him was he had been through some things in festival in times past, and it's not to criticize anybody, but he just didn't have somebody that he felt he could trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set out to earn his trust. And I think that's why we're good partners. And so one of the biggest parts of that was I made sure in the structuring of the company, which now I'm good at that now, learning how to build companies and all that stuff, C Corps and LLCs and yada, 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 which, by the way, all the big studios, that's all they do all the time, make new LLCs and roll over C Corps and do all this other stuff. You just have to understand what they're doing and start to understand how their financing works. And then you can figure out how it applies to a smaller budget, right? So obviously it's different with $1 million versus 10,000, but the structure can be very similar. So with this company, we created a C corp, and I just made sure that James had the controlling interest.
Hmm.
And then now, at any moment, with that controlling interest, what could he do?
Kick you off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that means I get to earn my place all the time.
Yeah.
And that makes me a dangerous man. I feel like when I have to earn my spot, that I'm the best John. And that's really what it comes down to. So if I want to be better, I'm in that role. And so that makes me dynamic and willing to try things and do things. And then so James challenges me creatively, just like Tommy does, just like Leanne does, just like Manny does. They challenge me creatively. So now I can apply my writing skills to business. And it's the same process. It's just, how do we get to here legally, right? Because you can do creative things in business that are not legal, right?
Yeah, of course.
That we do in writing.
Yep.
So,
God damn. John, I feel like I could talk to you for another 3 hours because
let's
you're
do
just
it.
like
No, it's going to be a long show. Your crew's going to get mad.
You're
if we
an
go there.
encyclopedia of knowledge, and this is all just come like, I know you've been in it for a while, but like this chapter of your life just seems to have, exploded.
It's a culmination,
overnight.
I think. It feels like that, but also I really do work hard. And so here's the thing. This is another thing. I really think about this a lot. There's this thing where people will say, I'm really humble, right? And the way that they'll say that they're really humble is by they'll say that they're bad at something that they're good at. That's not humility. That's false humility. You need to know what you're good at, and you need to know your faults. And so what I've learned is that I really know well what I'm not good at. And that means that I'm good at something. And so if you lean into that, which is I'm good at learning, I'm good at studying, I'm good at coming back from mistakes, then whatever my fault is, because there's always a fault, won't be as exposed as my strengths. And I said earlier about this concept of being someone who's an expert in one area, but maybe flawed emotionally. And we celebrate that in like shows like The Big Bang Theory.
Right.
That has become something that now is looked at as a good thing. It's good to have someone who's really smart, but also emotionally flawed. And obviously this is about the character Sheldon, right? He's this different guy, but he wasn't as flawed as we thought. He just was doing it in a different way. And so that's what I think I've learned about myself. I can drive to a point and I can help people get to their story by pushing in the way that I know how, and that helps them not have to deal with whatever the pushback is. Because I don't really care, right? Because what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, the worst thing that happens is I go get a job at CVS. CVS pays $20 an hour now, so I could always survive on that. You get a job at Mickey D's, dude, they pay like 25. I mean, that's ridiculous. When did that happen?
Yeah, and you wouldn't be working 100, 200 hours a week.
Nah, and I'll get burgers for free.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not the best, but it is what it is. What I'm saying is that there is always a way. And there's nothing, growing up the way I grew up, I watched my mom overcome with nothing. What I now have means there's no way I should fail. And what we call failure today isn't really failure. It's just a setback, right? And this is not to deride the focus on mental health because it's very important. But what we do is we exacerbate the situation by focusing on the person's flaws, when instead, I believe strongly, we should celebrate the person's strengths. So that means being honest with someone, like maybe you shouldn't do this, but you know what you're really good at? This. And showing them that and giving them examples of it. Tommy is literally one of the best writers I've ever met in my life. And I hope that when he watches this episode, and I know that he will, that I turn to the screen and tell him, Tommy, you're one of the best writers I've ever seen in my life. And I've read more books than anybody that I know. So I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm an expert. I know what's good writing or not. The one moment like in my life was I stopped believing I had to finish a book if I didn't like it. Yeah. It was a John Sanford book too. John Sanford, he's a mystery writer.
Okay.
Right? Written like 75 books. But there was a point where he started mailing it in a little bit. And hey, and by the way, I can say that because John Sanford almost hired me to be a producer on something. So I like him. I know him. He's a good dude. Solid dude. But there was one book that I was like,
Yeah, I'm done.
you've done this before, John. And I put it down. I read 20. I did buy it. So you got your $20 from Barnes & Noble, John. So it's funny. He'll probably watch this too and be like, what the heck? Why are you throwing knives
Why are you
at
throwing
me?
me under the bus,
Right?
man?
He's a good guy. But James Patterson is another one.
Yep.
Puts out 4 books a year. He only writes 1.
Yeah.
And there's other people that write 3. Yeah, there's a couple of times when they've been mailed in a little bit. They sell a lot of copies, but maybe not so much. I think that Tommy doesn't mail it in. Like he gives everything. James, another person, he doesn't mail it in. He gives me he gives me everything. He gives me his whole heart. And his team too. PJ, Ashes, Alyssa, Erica, Paul, Dan, they all give everything in that moment. So what you end up having is something greater than the culmination of the parts, right? The sum is greater than all the parts. I think that's what you have in me. All of those people, the Dan Diaz's of the world, the James Lamons, the Tommy Dwyers, the Matt Bells, right?
Yeah.
You treated me with great respect when I was in basically, for all intents and purposes, being at Westerman, you're like a super PA.
Yeah.
And it's completely okay to say that. And there's nothing wrong. I wasn't like, I wasn't like when I was, what was the first big thing? Well, the first big thing was Castle Rock season 2, right? I loaded trucks, bro. And there's nothing wrong with saying that.
I didn't see you as a glorified PA. I saw you as a creative collaborator.
Well, I appreciate that.
Who knows the place better than you? You're going to be the one that I want to talk to and get advice from.
And I knew where the lampshades were at the time.
You knew where all the lampshades were.
They've changed. I did know where all of them. That was because of Julia, the pilot.
That's right.
And so the Leslie and Christine were she one time gave me this like master class in lampshades and like Empire shades and this and that and this
and you retained all of it.
Most of it. I would say most of it. I would say that you retain it more when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, of course.
So when I was at Westerman, and if I think about it hard, I could probably get you stuff like harps and those are the little metal things that the lampshade sits on. What those are, where they come from. And Dan had all these books, like on furniture and on like the history of rugs and I read them because why not? I'm reading. And then he had his whole library and I would just read all the time. You know what I mean? My breaks were books, And so then you start to learn even more. And then also you're just shifting things around. So when you see, 300 gold candlesticks, you start to wonder, I wonder why the base of this is like this. And then you realize there's a dude who invented that thing. And then you know the history.
And there's a reason, and I'm going to learn it.
And I'm going to learn it. Why not? And then when someone says to you, what's this kind of candelabra? Like, oh, it's that right there.
I got the answer. Well, shit, man. Again, I could talk to you for a long time, but that feels like a good place to wrap this up.
Plus, we have a crew. They want them to be happy.
So real quick, if you can tell us, where can people find you? Where can people have access to you? I mean, you're the guy to be in contact with.
Yeah, so you can go to our website, www.hollywoodfilmgroup.com. Currently, the feature is just the Dead of Winter Horror Festival and Solus. So we did that. There's several short films that we're going to be starting on, including an X-Men fan film. That's kind of exciting.
Ooh, you and me have to talk about that.
We can talk about that. That's sure, absolutely. So we got a local guy, Evan Feldman, but we'll talk about that project that's coming up soon. There's several other ones I'm attached to. There's a couple documentaries. And so the best way to do is go there, click on the info button, and you can reach me. But you also find me everywhere else. I answer my DMs, John Edward Keough on Facebook, on Instagram, or john.keough.9. It doesn't matter. Just put in John Keough and you'll get to me. And so I'm open to collaboration. I'm open to ideas. I read everything. So send it to me. I'm open.
John, thank you for being so accessible and so passionate about everything you do.
Let's make some movies.
Yeah.
Make it.
Fucking make it happen, man. All right, everybody. John Keough.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.